Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Myriam Sandoval, and I am the Visitor and Member Services Lead at the University of Arizona Museum of Art. Today, we're at the studio of the highly celebrated public artist in this year's School of Arts Alumni of the Year, Barbara Grygutis. Barbara has been commissioned to create over 75 large-scale works throughout North America and even internationally, in settings ranging from sculpture gardens, public plazas, monuments, gateways, and memorials. Through her work, Barbara creates public spaces that enhance the built environment, encourages civic interaction, and reveals unspoken relationships between nature and humanity. Let's take a look around to see where the art comes to life. Well, thank you so much for having us in your space today, Barbara. I'm so excited to look around. I wanted to ask you, these are works that you fabricated in your own studio, correct?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
They're very impressive.
It's exciting that I have the space now to be able to fabricate large pieces. That's really was my goal, and I was able to do it. And these strings that you see are holding these up so they don't get blown over by the wind because they're not permanently installed.
I see. Well, can we take a look inside your space?
Absolutely. Let's go inside.
Let's go.
Oh, this thing, it's to keep the sun out.
Oh,
Yeah, to keep the sun out. Okay. So here we are in my fabrication space. This is just the front area where we do the welding, and obviously here are the tables, and here's my new roller forklift. But what's really great about this space is I can move things around all the time. I have everything on wheels, and we just clear it out when we need more space, and it's very functional. It's a very functional space.
and I see you've added your own personal touch as well.
Well, I would hope so. I would hope so.
It's truly amazing. So now we're in your office spaces. Is this where the designs happen?
Most of them. This is a fantastic space. As you can see, I have spectacular views of the
Absolutely.
Catalinas, and on the south side, I can see the city, but really just the treetops. It's very soft from the south. I built this so I could have a place that I come to and can visualize works of art. And I had the opportunity to build this. I wanted a place that would be calming. You can see we have beautiful views of the city and the mountains. We can walk over here and look at the mountains, and it's a calming place. I spend 8 to 10 hours a day here and working, and it's been a fantastic place for me to work. My last studio was downtown. I was downtown Tucson for 35 years in an old building. And the space was, and it was like a cave. And it was a wonderful space. I had 13-foot ceilings, and it was a wonderful space. But this is a totally different kind of space. This space brings in the air and the light and all of the things that influence a work of art.
Yes.
Air and light and beautiful nature, and I wanted that to be part of my work environment. So lucky I had the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, currently, the museum is hosting its annual Masters of Fine Arts Thesis exhibition, which is a collaboration that's been ongoing with the School of Art. And we recently discovered that you actually hosted your own MFA, in fact, the very first MFA thesis exhibition at the museum in 1970. And I just wanted to know if your long history with the university played a role in your decision to house your archives at the museum's research arm, the Archive of Visual Arts.
When I was a graduate student and the MFA exhibition was coming up, I went and asked Bill Stedman if he would consider showing graduate work in the museum. And he said he would. My work was three-dimensional, so I had nothing really to put on the walls. And I invited my friend Nancy Miller, who was a painter, that she joined me in the show. So we were the first two people to have a show there as graduate students.
That's amazing.
That's how that came around.
That's so amazing. That's a tradition that's well over 40 years old now. So, what did make you decide to house your archives with the AVA?
I believe it was Moira Joffrian that told me that there was an archive, and I went and talked to Jill. I believe I showed her the book. I can't remember honestly exactly. And Jill invited me to uh, house my archive. I really had not thought much about it until Jill mentioned it, and that's really how it got going. Since then, I've learned of other archives that exist. One is the American Art Archive, which exists in Washington, D.C., and it's my understanding that you share with them. So that would have been another choice for me, but really, the University of Arizona has a very well developed facility. And Jill gave me a tour, and I was pretty excited about it. So that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, well, it's
Yeah.
exciting that we're going to be able to add your collections to the works that folks can access for research and I did want to touch base earlier. We had when we were outside your studio, you had mentioned what a dream it was for you to have your own fabrication space in your studio, and I just wanted to know what that meant for you, having that dream realized.
I had been fabricating in my other studio in downtown Tucson in clay. I had a big kiln there, but I have not worked in clay or made those kinds of public art pieces in probably 20 years. And when I got into metal, I really didn't have the facility to do that downtown. We didn't have the right outlets, we didn't have the right equipment. So I wanted to get back into making smaller pieces. For me, a smaller piece is 8 feet and not 20 or 30 feet. I just wanted to get back into thinking about smaller works of art where you can kind of work out some of your ideas. Of course, now you have the computer, which is not, so that makes a big difference too. So it's very exciting to be able to fabricate these things here, these smaller pieces, but the process is different than when I was working with clay.
Which I know you kind of touched based on the evolution of materials you use, and I wanted to ask, going back to your very first commission, how did you become involved with public art?
I've always been interested in large scale works. I always wanted to be an architect, and I started out in Arizona at the School of Architecture, and was suggested to me that I walk across the street to the art department. So things worked out for me very well. And of course, lots of architects now want to do public art. So, it's the tides have changed a little bit.
Absolutely.
But that I've always wanted to build, and I can't tell you why.
And I know that your first commission work was the Navajo County Government Center. And based on what we've already discussed, I'm assuming you fabricated those tiles in your own studio at the time.
We did. It's a 19-foot by 19-foot mural, and we actually laid it out in the parking lot. I got that commission because Jim Gresham, who was an architect and a good friend of mine, he always wanted to put art in his architecture, and this opportunity came up, and he invited me to do something. And so Navajo County Governmental Center was his project, and it looks terrific today. Anyway, it was a great project. Looking back, it's very different than what I do today, very different stylistically.
Well, I wanted to also go into the fact that you've created over 75 public art installations throughout North America as well as internationally. And many of our museum visitors and students at the U Arizona campus interact with your installation Front Row Center, which is located in the Arts Oasis. And I'm just curious about how you were approached with this project.
I actually had to look that up, and it was a competition. Dean Savanier had a competition, and I found the letter where he said I had won the competition. So
Yeah.
before I proposed front row center, there was nothing there. It was just a blank, by blank slate, I mean dirt. There was nothing. It was just dirt. And that space was very, very hot. And Maurice Savanier came up with the concept of an arts oasis. And they wanted a place that students would sit and interact and be out in. I've always been interested in combining landscape elements with sculpture. I think those things have to mingle in the environment. No one thing can be its own separate entity. The University of Arizona is an arboretum, and so this idea of putting trees, I think, resonated. They also asked that I work with students. So once I came up with the concept of chairs, the University of Arizona students did the casting. So that was a huge project that had many elements that were all combined together. Then I designed the shade canopy that is now not there. It was taken out for this last remodel, but there was a shade canopy that was held up by 5 of these chairs.
Yes. I will say that's a favorite location for graduates to take pictures. It's very well visited even today. I myself have lunch there every
I'm happy to hear that.
And we also touched base on this already, but you mentioned the evolution of materials you used throughout your career, ranging from aluminum, stainless steel, brick, ceramic, tile, concrete, and glass. And earlier in your career, you were able to fabricate many of your sculptures when you were using ceramics and tiles. But one installation that you've done recently was the Luminarias One Season, located in the Twin Rivers Community Park in Greeley, Colorado. You traveled all the way to Germany to fabricate the glass you used.
Well, I had been aware of Franz Meyer of Munich, which is a glass fabrication shop. So I was aware of them. I've always been interested in glass because I'm interested in light and how light comes through materials. So I had an opportunity to build these glass towers, which are 30 feet tall. It's called the Seasons. This is in Greeley, Colorado, which is a small community, but the arts administrator there suggested I propose whatever I want. So I had the opportunity. I thought, wow, I really want to work at Franz Meyer of Munich. I had the opportunity to propose this, but all of this glass, all these panels were shipped to Greeley, Colorado, and we installed them. It was an amazing experience. I designed the frames for them, so they're sculptural. They're somewhat sculptural. So really, that project, it combines many things that I really wanted to work with: light, color, sculpture, framing, big, making a statement. It had the opportunity, and it's a beloved project.
Will you go over the evolution of the materials you've used throughout your career?
Well, I've been working for a long time, and I started with clay. And when I was started with clay and public art, there weren't any public art programs. So I pretty much had to wing it the way I wanted to wing it, starting to make things. But this is before lighting became so popular. I did a couple projects where we illuminated the interior, and then that caught on. But I was one of the first people to illuminate my sculptures.
Yeah, that's something you don't
I
often
think
see.
I think I've had a lot of influence over the public art field in that regard.
Absolutely. Speaking of travel, you recently were invited to participate for an installation at the European Cultural Center in Venice, Italy, which has then traveled to Switzerland. How did this opportunity arise?
The European Cultural Center puts on exhibitions every year in combination with the Venice Biennale. One year it's more focused on architecture, and then the next year more focused on art. So it was the curators who were focused on architecture. They do have an art section. They invited me to show, and I built a work of art specifically for that show. It was in 4 pieces, so it could be shipped. The piece I made for them is called Seagrass, and of course, it's based on the seagrass in the lagoons around Venice. It's such a prominent feature of Venice, this seagrass. And I sent it via FedEx, and it arrived there on a gondola.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is
They installed it on a 3rd-story balcony. It was very exciting, and I really enjoyed working with them. And 2 years later, they invited me back for another show, and I sent them a different piece titled Portal.
And Portal's the work that's now in Switzerland, correct?
That's correct.
Amazing.
Art St. Urban requested that I ship it to them, and they're near Lucerne, Switzerland, and they have a wonderful place.
Yeah, congratulations on
Oh,
that
thank you.
invitation. And I just would love to hear about what you're currently working on. What's the latest project?
So I just completed a piece for the Drinkwater Underpass in Scottsdale, Arizona. Drinkwater Underpass, if you're familiar with, is a challenge because of various lighting conditions, and there are traffic challenges. The challenge is to create a work of art that is basically a drive-by, that you can drive by and still get a sense. So I think I thoroughly changed the Drinkwater Underpass, which was a white and uninteresting place. I asked the city to paint it a deep turquoise, which they did. And the piece I have there, titled Breakaway, is a work of art that resonates for Scottsdale and pulls you through the tunnel. So it's 365 feet. We also had to deal with lighting, and no color lighting, no fancy lighting. We just had to illuminate the work of art so that a driver sees it but is not stopped and it's not dangerous. This is the entry to the city of Scottsdale.
And just my final question for you is it's just the fact that your portfolio continues to grow in narratives, mediums, and styles. And I'd like to know what inspires your work.
I've been asked that a couple times, and I've had to think about it a lot. I think my major influence really has been the desert and the light here. It sounds cliched, but it really is true. I've been here since 1964, and I think it really has played a major part in my evolution as an artist. When you're in the desert, you see sparkling little diamonds dancing around all the time. It's a different kind of light. And I think that has been part of my evolution, is understanding how that has influenced me and how I see the world. The light flows through my work. It comes in and goes out of my work. Thank you.
Well, Barbara, thank you so much for your time and for sharing your space, your stories, and for all that you do to make our public spaces special.
Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today for our conversation with Barbara Grygutis. You can learn more about Barbara's work by visiting her website, barbaragrygutis.com. You can also access Barbara's collection once it's been processed at the Archive of Visual Arts by visiting our website to book an appointment. I also encourage you all to visit the Museum of Art and see Barbara's Front Row Center firsthand. The museum's open Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4:30, not including summer hours. UAMA membership includes perks like visiting artist studios like Barbara's, as well as free admission year-round. And when you join as a member, you support vital areas in the museum, such as exhibitions, programmings, and operational costs. So if you're interested in supporting our mission and also get some amazing perks by doing so, feel free to give me a call.